What would you do if the business you built betrayed everything you stood for? That's the question Sophia Grant faces when rumors of judgmental, unkind service at her luxury hotel prompt her to go undercover as a regular guest. What she uncovers is more troubling than she imagined. But Sophia isn't one to back down. Watch as she fights to restore respect, dignity, and warmth to her hotel, facing resistance, bold confrontations, and powerful revelations along the way. Will her vision be enough to transform not just her staff, but the entire culture? If you believe in the power of one person to make a difference, like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Now, let's dive into Sophia's incredible journey. Sophia Grant, a name synonymous with luxury, confidence, and resilience, stared up at the sleek, glassy facade of Grant Towers. A slight shiver ran through her despite the warmth of the early afternoon. She was here for a reason that went far beyond personal pride. This was her legacy. Every brick, every polished marble tile, every glimmering chandelier inside was part of her dream made real. But the persistent drop in guest satisfaction ratings had unsettled her. She'd worked her entire life to ensure that each guest, regardless of background or appearance, was treated with the respect and dignity her own early life had often lacked. At 40, she had ascended from the dimly lit corners of a struggling neighborhood to owning one of the city's most prestigious hotels. This journey hadn't come without sacrifice. There had been countless sleepless nights, rejection, and self-doubt gnawing at her resolve. Still, she endured, even thrived, on the strength of values she learned growing up with her mother in a cramped, run-down apartment in East Fremont. And those values, respect, empathy, inclusivity, were what she expected her staff to uphold at Grant Towers. The complaints in her hotel reviews troubled her deeply. Reports of rude, indifferent staff and unprofessional treatment had crept into her mind like a splinter that refused to heal. Words like condescending and judgmental kept surfacing in feedback. Words that struck directly against the heart of everything Grant Towers was meant to represent. Yet somehow these issues continued unaddressed. Perhaps I've been too distant, she thought. After all, she hadn't seen the day-to-day reality of her hotel from a guest's perspective. Instead of immediately addressing her staff, she chose a different approach. A chance to experience her hotel as an ordinary visitor. Today, she stood outside her own hotel without the poise and elegance she usually exuded. Her attire, a simple wool coat, slacks, and comfortable shoes, was modest. She wore no makeup, and her hair was loosely tied back, making her look worlds away from the powerful businesswoman the world knew. Taking a deep breath, Sophia walked through the glass doors. The subtle scent of white tea and fig permeated the air, a delicate fragrance she'd personally chosen. She approached the gleaming reception desk, where Aaron, a young man in a crisp uniform, sat typing away on his computer. His eyes briefly flicked up to meet hers, then returned to his screen. "Excuse me," Sophia began politely. "I'd like to book a room for the night, please." Aaron paused, his fingers stilling over the keyboard as he looked at her again, this time with the slightest of raised brows. "Are you sure?" he asked, his tone implying doubt, as if he doubted she could afford it. She held her breath, keeping her voice calm. "Yes, I'd like a room," she replied, steady but firm. Aaron gave a non-committal shrug and slowly resumed typing. The entire interaction was a far cry from the warm, welcoming experience she had painstakingly cultivated for her brand. Aaron's gaze didn't soften as he handed her a card. "Room 214, he said, his tone flat. He gestured toward the elevators but didn't bother with the courtesy of a smile or a welcoming word. Sophia had to steady herself, reminding herself to breathe deeply. On her way to the elevators, she passed a group of employees. They fell silent when she neared, exchanging glances and whispering behind her back. She could feel the slight sting of their silent judgment. It was a far cry from the inclusivity she'd poured her soul into fostering. Am I really seeing what I think I am? She wondered, almost as if in disbelief. As she entered her assigned room, her heart sank. The suite she found herself in was a shadow of what Grant Towers had built its reputation on. The sheets had a faintly stale smell, and dust lingered in corners of the room as though it had been hastily prepared. She glanced out of the window, taking a moment to gather herself, but her thoughts were a whirlwind. This was the first day, and already the signs of negligence and indifference were more vivid than any review could convey. That night, Sophia thought back to her roots. She remembered those long, grueling shifts waiting tables and cleaning offices, where people often looked right through her or sneered at her humble clothes. Those moments had driven her to create a sanctuary where people would never feel dismissed or judged. This was a place meant to celebrate the value of every person who walked through its doors. Tomorrow, she decided, I'll stay and observe more. She needed a fuller picture before taking action. The following morning, Sophia dressed once again in her modest disguise, her resolve stronger than ever. She reminded herself of the purpose of this unusual inspection, to see her hotel from the inside out. It wasn't just about the reviews anymore. It was about understanding the truth of what her guests experience daily. Sophia took the elevator down to the lobby and saw the usual morning bustle. Guests checking out, others lingering over coffee in the lounge, staff busy with their morning routines. But as she moved toward the reception desk to inquire about the amenities, she noticed Aaron and another employee, Maya, sharing a laugh as she approached. Aaron's expression soured when he saw her, the same cold indifference as yesterday flickering in his eyes. Maya, who worked as a concierge, glanced at Sophia's plain attire with a hint of condescension. "Good morning," Sophia greeted them, her voice steady. "Could you let me know what breakfast options are available?" Maya barely looked at her, still smirking from her private joke with Aaron. "Well, we have a continental breakfast. It's over there." She pointed vaguely toward the lounge without offering further guidance. Sophia nodded politely, thanking them, but inside, her disappointment deepened. Their lack of courtesy was becoming clearer with every interaction, leaving her feeling strangely out of place in her own hotel. Making her way to the breakfast area, she spotted Ben, a server she vaguely recognized from previous visits. She observed him as he gracefully served a couple at the far end of the lounge, his manner warm and attentive. Curious, she approached him. "Good morning," she said as he turned to her. "Could I please have some coffee?" Ben looked up and met her gaze with a friendly smile. "Certainly, ma'am. Would you like cream or sugar with that?" he asked, polite and professional. Sophia felt a spark of relief. "Just black, thank you," she replied, feeling her spirits lift slightly. As she sipped her coffee, she noticed Aaron and Maya watching her from across the lobby, whispering and chuckling among themselves. She overheard Aaron say, "Why does she keep hanging around? You'd think she's lost or something." Maya stifled a laugh, and they shared a smug glance. Sophia's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. The sting of their casual mockery brought back memories from her early days, memories she thought she'd left behind. She recalled the way people would whisper about her worn clothes and hesitant manners when she worked late nights in her youth, earning just enough to scrape by. She'd thought she'd overcome those judgments. Yet here she was, facing them anew in a place she'd built with her own hands. After breakfast, she decided to explore the hotel further. She found herself in the lobby restroom and overheard Jessica, a housekeeping supervisor, chatting with another housekeeper, Carla. "I don't know why we even have people like her staying here," Jessica said, her voice sharp. "You'd think this place was turning into a budget inn or something. It's bad for our image." Carla laughed, her tone equally derisive. "I saw her too. She looks like she could be someone's nanny, not a guest at Grant Towers." The words cut deep. Sophia felt her breath catch, the humiliation pressing down on her. It wasn't simply that they were judging her. It was that these were her employees, people who should represent her values. Their prejudice was like a slap to her pride. She steadied herself, forcing down the flush of anger. She couldn't confront them, not yet. Stepping out of the restroom, she kept her face expressionless, moving with quiet determination. She was no stranger to hardship, and she hadn't survived a difficult life by giving up at the first sign of trouble. But as she looked around the elegant lobby, she felt an aching disconnect. The hotel was everything she had envisioned in its appearance. Yet beneath the surface, something ugly had taken root. Later that day, Sophia approached the reception desk to ask for directions to the spa. This time, it was Liam, one of the mid-level managers, who was stationed there. Liam, sharp-eyed and impeccably dressed, greeted her with a perfunctory nod, his attention clearly elsewhere. "I'd like to visit the spa. Could you tell me how to get there?" she asked. Liam barely looked up from his phone. "The spa is on the 3rd floor," he replied, his tone brisk. Sophia waited a moment, hoping he'd offer a bit more guidance or perhaps a suggestion on services, as she'd expected from her highly trained staff. When he remained silent, she gently prompted him. "Could you tell me more about the services offered there?" Liam sighed, glancing at her as though she were an inconvenience. "It's just a standard spa. Massages, facials, that sort of thing. You can read the brochure when you get there." Sophia nodded, biting back her disappointment. His dismissiveness was painfully evident, as if he couldn't be bothered with someone he deemed unimportant. She thanked him politely, but inside, her patience was wearing thin. Every interaction seemed to reveal another layer of disdain from her staff, a painful contradiction to everything she'd worked to establish. By the end of the day, Sophia returned to her room with a mixture of sadness and determination weighing on her heart. Her initial plans for a quiet observation were unraveling quickly. She could no longer ignore the growing evidence that her employees, the very people she'd entrusted with her legacy, were betraying the values she held sacred. Reflecting on the day's interactions, she felt a fierce resolve settle within her. The memories of her past, of the long, exhausting nights working thankless jobs, flooded her mind. But this time, they didn't bring despair. They fueled her. She'd overcome so much to reach where she was today, and she wasn't going to let the callousness of a few individuals tarnish her vision. She would stay another day, she decided. One more day to see if this pattern of behavior extended further. But her purpose had shifted. No longer was this a simple undercover visit. It was a mission to uncover the full extent of what was happening under her nose. And once she would return not as an invisible guest, but as Sophia Grant, the woman who built Grant Towers. Sophia awoke the following morning with a mix of determination and dread. She had seen enough yesterday to know that her staff was in dire need of reform, but she needed to know how deep the problem ran. Was it limited to a few employees, or was this a culture that had embedded itself more broadly? To find out, she decided to extend her stay under her assumed name. After arranging to stay another night, Sophia made her way downstairs, feeling the quiet judgment of some employees who recognized her from the day before. There was no hint of a friendly greeting or even acknowledgement as she passed by. A part of her ached at the thought that she, the owner, felt more like an outsider here than a valued guest. She returned to the front desk, where Aaron was stationed. He looked up, and a slight sneer tugged at his lips. "Back again, I see?" he asked, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Yes," she replied calmly. "I'd like to extend my stay for one more night." Aaron gave a small, disbelieving chuckle. "Well, that's determined of you, but we're fully booked tonight. We may be able to find something less accommodating if you can handle that." She kept her composure, replying evenly, "I'd appreciate whatever you have available." Aaron tapped away at the keyboard with exaggerated slowness, casting sidelong glances at a few other staff members who had gathered nearby. She caught him muttering something under his breath to Gina, another receptionist, who stifled a laugh. They exchanged glances as though sharing a private joke at her expense. Every click of the keyboard felt like a personal affront, but she forced herself to remain silent, noting every small humiliation as it unfolded. Finally, he handed her a key card with a smirk. "Room 312, he said, barely concealing his disdain. "Not exactly luxury, but I'm sure it'll be more than enough." As she walked to her room, the whispers and stifled laughter of nearby employees trailed after her, prickling her pride. She entered her assigned room, finding it even less welcoming than her previous one. The bed was hastily made, with the linens slightly wrinkled, and a faint musty smell lingered in the air. She closed her eyes, suppressing the anger that bubbled beneath the surface. Throughout the day, she made a point of observing the staff at every level. In the dining area, Jake, one of the younger servers, barely looked at her when taking her order, giving preference to other guests who looked the part of the usual clientele. Her table wasn't cleared promptly, and when she asked for a small adjustment to her order, Jake sighed loudly, giving her a dismissive look. "Anything else?" he asked in a tone that dripped with impatience. "No, thank you," Sophia replied, her voice tight. She watched as he hurried off, not even waiting to hear her response. This disregard, this assumption that she was unimportant, gnawed at her. Each encounter seemed to pile onto her earlier experiences, adding fuel to the fire of her frustration and hurt. These were not just employees. They were people she had carefully selected, people she had trusted to carry forward the values of Grant Towers. And yet they treated her, who they assumed to be a simple guest, with an air of superiority and scorn that contradicted everything she believed in. As the evening approached, Sophia encountered Jessica again in the hallway near her room. Jessica shot her a disdainful glance, her lips curving into a smug smile. "Can I help you with something?" Jessica asked, feigning politeness but with an edge that made Sophia's skin prickle. "No, thank you," Sophia replied, maintaining her composure. Jessica lingered, clearly entertained by her own show of contempt. She held a glass vase filled with water and flowers, which seemed an odd item to carry in the hallway. As Sophia turned to leave, Jessica shifted and, accidentally, tipped the vase over, spilling the cold water down Sophia's front. She gasped at the shock of the chill, momentarily frozen. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Jessica drawled with a smirk. "I didn't realize you were standing so close." Sophia's heart hammered with a mixture of shock and anger. Her clothes clung to her skin, wet and uncomfortable, as Jessica strolled away with a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. The humiliation gnawed at her pride, reminding her painfully of the early days of her career when people had dismissed and belittled her because of her humble appearance. She fought back tears, her fists clenched tightly at her sides. Yet, she refused to give Jessica the satisfaction of seeing her break. Retreating to her room, Sophia closed the door and took a shaky breath. She had never felt so small, so utterly disrespected in her own space. This was her hotel, her dream, her life's work, and here she was, humiliated by the very people she employed. Every insult, every dismissive glance, every laugh at her expense reverberated within her, solidifying her resolve. "They don't know who I am," she thought, staring at her reflection in the mirror. "They think they can treat people like me as if we're nothing, simply because we don't look the part." She could feel the weight of years of struggle, sacrifice, and hard-won victories pressing down on her, fueling the fire of her determination. The pain of being belittled once again was raw, but it only strengthened her resolve. She wasn't going to let this slide. She would not allow her hotel to become a place where people were judged on their appearance rather than their worth. That night, as she lay in bed, memories of her journey to success filled her mind. She recalled working late nights cleaning offices and scrubbing floors to support her education, and the feeling of worthlessness that would creep in every time someone treated her as invisible. She thought of her mother, who had always told her, "You have to work harder than anyone else if you want to be seen." Those words had kept her going through the toughest times. This place, Grant Towers, was supposed to be a symbol of what she had overcome. It was supposed to embody the values she cherished. And yet, here in her own creation, she felt the sting of prejudice as sharply as she had in her past. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Aaron standing there, a smug look on his face, holding a towel. "Oh, figured you might need this," he said, offering it with an insincere grin. Before she could respond, he added, "Just trying to be helpful. We have certain standards here, you know." His words hung in the air, each syllable dripping with mockery. She took the towel, saying nothing, watching as he turned and walked away, laughter in his eyes. Standards, she thought bitterly. What standards are those? She closed the door, her hand gripping the towel tightly, and her heart pounded with a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow she would face them, but not as the unassuming stranger they thought her to be. Tomorrow, she would face them as herself. Sophia Grant, the woman who had built this place from the ground up. In the quiet of her room, Sophia allowed herself one last moment of reflection, one last memory of her past that brought everything full circle. She had been raised to believe that every person, regardless of their appearance or background, deserved respect. She'd built her life on that principle, and she wouldn't let a few misguided employees tarnish it. Tomorrow would be the day she reclaimed her hotel. She would make sure they understood that no one, no guest, no employee, would be allowed to treat another person as though they were less than worthy of respect. This was no longer just about enforcing policy. It was about upholding her legacy, a legacy built on dignity and equality. Her resolve hardened. She knew what she had to do. Sophia rose early the next morning, preparing for the day with a renewed sense of purpose. Today, she would no longer be the quiet, unassuming stranger her employees thought they could ignore. Today, she would be Sophia Grant, the founder and owner of Grant Towers. She chose an outfit that projected both confidence and sophistication. A sleek navy blue pantsuit, perfectly tailored to fit her frame, with subtle but elegant jewelry. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and the faintest touch of makeup accented her eyes, bringing a sharpness to her gaze. The look conveyed authority, reminding anyone who saw her that she was not someone to be underestimated. Stepping out of her room, she felt the weight of her resolve solidify with each step. She knew that her appearance alone would give her employees pause, but her goal was not just to make them uncomfortable. She intended to make them fully aware of the consequences of their behavior. As she approached the lobby, the hum of the morning bustle softened as staff members glanced up, one by one, noticing her presence. The whispers began almost immediately, spreading among the employees like ripples in a pond. Several employees who had seen her before now looked at her with a mixture of confusion and hesitation, as if sensing that something about this woman in the elegant suit was different from the person they dismissed earlier. Aaron, stationed at the front desk, spotted her and his eyes widened, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. He leaned over to Gina, whispering something under his breath, but it was clear he wasn't as sure of himself as he had been the day before. Sophia approached the reception desk, her gaze steady, her expression calm but unyielding. She met Aaron's stare head-on, waiting for him to speak first. Can I help you?" he asked, his usual smirk absent. "Yes, Aaron," she replied smoothly, her voice carrying a slight edge. "You can indeed. But first, I believe it's time for some introductions." Aaron blinked, thrown off guard. The other employees nearby glanced at one another in confusion, sensing the tension in the air. Sophia took a steady breath. "I am Sophia Grant, the owner and founder of Grant Towers." A ripple of shock passed through the gathered staff, and an uneasy silence settled over the lobby. Aaron's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to process her words. "You," he stammered, his usual arrogance vanishing as realization dawned. "You're the owner?" "Yes, Aaron," she said, her tone calm but firm. "I am the owner of this hotel. I am the person who built this place, the one who trusted each of you to uphold the values this establishment was built upon." Gina's hand flew to her mouth, and she exchanged a horrified look with Jessica, who had joined the group. The smirks and disdain that had been so evident before had been replaced by expressions of shock and, for some, shame. Sophia's gaze swept over the assembled employees, her expression unyielding. "Yesterday, I came to this hotel undercover to see how our guests are treated. I wanted to experience firsthand the service my staff provides, and I hope to find that the principles I've worked so hard to instill were alive and well here." Her voice rose slightly, carrying across the lobby, reaching each and every employee in earshot. "Instead, I was ignored, mocked, and humiliated by those I trusted to represent my business. Some of you even went out of your way to ensure that I felt unwelcome in my own establishment." Her words hung heavy in the air, and a visible tension filled the space as the weight of her disappointment settled over them. Jessica, standing beside Aaron, looked as though she wanted to melt into the floor. Her face had drained of color, her usual bravado replaced by an expression of growing panic. Sophia turned her gaze directly to her, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Jessica," she said, her voice cold. "You went so far as to deliberately spill water on me. You thought that humiliating someone you deemed lesser was somehow acceptable behavior in this hotel." Jessica opened her mouth, attempting to stammer out a defense. I didn't know it was you." Sophia's gaze hardened. "The issue is not that you didn't know who I was. The issue is that you would treat anyone that way. You assumed, because I wasn't dressed in the finest clothes, that I didn't belong here. That assumption goes against everything Grant Towers stands for." Jessica swallowed hard, her shoulders slumping under the weight of Sophia's words. She nodded, unable to meet Sophia's eyes. Turning her gaze to Aaron, she continued, "Aaron, as the front desk clerk, you are the first face our guests see. You're the one responsible for welcoming them and setting the tone for their stay. Yet, you chose to mock and dismiss me the moment you thought I didn't fit the image you had in mind. You made assumptions about my worth based solely on my appearance." Aaron's face reddened, his jaw clenched tightly. He glanced down, shame flooding his features. Sophia straightened, addressing the entire group. "This is not just about me. This is about every guest who comes here. Grant Towers was built to be a place where people from all walks of life could feel valued and respected. I came here with the hope that my employees shared that vision, but instead, I discovered that a culture of judgment and condescension has taken root." A murmur ran through the crowd, several employees lowering their heads, unable to look her in the eye. Effective immediately, Sophia announced, her voice resolute, "There will be changes. For those of you who cannot uphold the standards of respect and dignity this hotel demands, there will be no place for you here. Those who choose to stay will undergo mandatory training on professionalism, inclusivity, and respect. This training is not optional." She paused, letting her words sink in, and surveyed the crowd, taking in the range of expressions: shock, regret, and, for a few, a spark of determination. "To those who are willing to change, who are willing to uphold the values of this establishment, I am offering a chance to stay. But know this, if I see or hear of any behavior that goes against the principles of Grant Towers, you will be dismissed, no exceptions." As she spoke, Ben, the young server who had treated her with kindness the day before, stepped forward. His face was solemn but resolute. "Ms. Grant, I want you to know that I'm committed to upholding those values. I understand that my actions matter, and I want to do better." Sophia looked at him, the first hint of warmth returning to her expression. "Thank you, Ben. People like you are exactly what Grant Towers needs." The silence in the lobby was profound as the employees processed the gravity of Sophia's words. No one dared to speak, and Sophia could see the weight of her expectations settle over them, a tangible force that reshaped the very atmosphere of the room. Finally, she turned to Aaron and Jessica. "As for the two of you," she said, her tone measured but firm, "I'm afraid your actions have left me no choice. Effective immediately, you are both dismissed. Your conduct is incompatible with the standards of this establishment." Jessica's face crumpled, and Aaron looked as if he were about to argue. But one look at Sophia's resolute gaze silenced him. They both nodded, too stunned to resist, and quietly stepped back. Sophia turned to the remaining employees, her voice gentler now but still resolute. "I believe in second chances, and I believe in the possibility of growth and change. For those of you who choose to stay, this is an opportunity to create a better culture, one built on mutual respect and genuine hospitality." She let her words linger, meeting the eyes of each employee. She saw determination in some, regret in others, but most importantly, a newfound understanding. This was a moment of transformation, the beginning of a new era for Grant Towers, and every person in that room felt it. With her message delivered, Sophia walked out of the lobby, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Her heart beat steadily, a quiet strength fueling her every step. She had come here to find the truth, and she had. But now, she was committed to something greater, restoring the values that had built her legacy. ensuring that her hotel would become a place of genuine hospitality, not just luxury. As she walked to her office, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. The hardest part was done, and the future lay ahead, ready for the change she would bring. The culture at Grant Towers would shift, but it would be her vision, her values that guided it forward. The morning after her decisive confrontation, Sophia walked through the hotel with a new clarity of purpose. Today marked the beginning of a transformation that she would personally oversee. Grant Towers was no longer just a business. It reflected her values, and she was prepared to defend them. She summoned her department heads for an urgent meeting, gathering them in a private conference room overlooking the city. The air was thick with anticipation as the managers exchanged glances, clearly anxious after the events of the previous day. Ben, the server who had shown kindness during her undercover visit, sat beside Tina, the guest services manager, both of whom looked at Sophia with expressions of respect and determination. Sophia surveyed the room, letting a moment of silence pass. Then she spoke, her voice steady and calm. Yesterday, I experienced firsthand the culture that has taken root in this hotel. And let me be clear, it's a culture that has no place here. This establishment was founded on respect, dignity, and inclusivity, values I hold dear. Effective immediately, these will be our guiding principles. Martin, the head of housekeeping, raised his hand, clearly uncomfortable. Ms. Grant, if I may, change like this doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take time to get everyone on board. Sophia nodded, understanding the challenge ahead. I'm fully aware, Martin. This isn't a quick fix. It's a complete overhaul. And it starts with each one of you, the leaders of this establishment. If we want to create a culture of respect, it has to be demonstrated from the top down. Ben spoke up, his voice steady. I think we can do it. There are people here who want to do better, who want to make this hotel a place people feel proud of. We just need the right direction. Sophia's expression softened slightly. Thank you, Ben. That's exactly the spirit we need. She looked around the table, her gaze settling on each manager in turn. I've brought in a team of professionals who specialize in training staff on respect, inclusivity, and customer service. Starting tomorrow, every employee will participate in these sessions. This training is mandatory, and it will be ongoing. Tina shifted in her seat, her face thoughtful. And for those who don't want to change? Sophia's eyes hardened slightly. For those who refuse to embrace the values we stand for, there will be no place here. This hotel is entering a new era, and only those committed to upholding our principles will remain. The department heads nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Sophia outlined the new code of conduct, which clearly spelled out expectations for respect and professionalism. Every employee would sign a statement agreeing to these standards, and violations would be met with immediate disciplinary action. The training sessions began the following day, led by a team of experienced professionals who specialized in hospitality and cultural sensitivity. The trainers were thorough, guiding employees through role-playing exercises and teaching them how to create an environment of warmth and respect for all guests. Sophia attended many of the sessions herself, sitting quietly in the back, observing her employees as they grappled with the concepts of empathy and inclusivity. She watched as some employees, like Emma, a young receptionist, fully embraced the training, showing a genuine willingness to change. During one session, Emma approached Sophia during a break. Ms. Grant, she said, her voice soft but sincere. I wanted to apologize for the way I behaved. I didn't realize how my actions could come across to guests. This training, it's been an eye-opener for me. Sophia smiled, feeling a small spark of hope. Thank you, Emma. Acknowledging our mistakes is the first step toward improvement. I'm glad to see you're taking this seriously. Emma nodded, a hint of determination in her eyes. Ma'am. I want to do better. Not everyone, however, was as receptive. Jessica's friends, who had openly mocked Sophia during her undercover visit, were clearly resistant. They showed up for the training but maintained a defensive attitude, unwilling to engage fully in the exercises. One afternoon, as Sophia observed the session, she noticed Sam, a bellhop and one of Jessica's close friends, rolling his eyes during a discussion on empathy. Frustrated, Sophia decided to address the situation directly. After the session, she approached him. "Sam, I noticed you seemed less than engaged during today's training. Is there something you'd like to discuss?" Sam hesitated, then shrugged, attempting to sound casual. "It's just, I don't see why all this sensitivity stuff matters. Most guests just want good service, not all this extra fuss." Sophia's expression remained calm, though her gaze was unwavering. "Sam, this extra fuss is about treating people with respect. It's about understanding that every guest deserves to feel valued. If that's something you don't agree with, then perhaps this isn't the right place for you." Sam shifted uncomfortably, finally muttering, "I understand, Ms. Grant. I'll try to do better." She nodded, satisfied for now, but aware that his commitment was tenuous. Change was a process, and not everyone would adapt as easily. Still, she was resolute. Those who could not or would not meet the new standards would eventually have to leave. As the weeks went by, the atmosphere at Grant Towers began to shift. Employees who had once participated in gossip and judgmental behavior became more reserved, mindful of their interactions with guests and each other. A sense of professionalism started to take root, and Sophia noticed the difference almost immediately. She walked the floors of the hotel daily, personally checking in with staff and observing the progress of her policies. She could see that, gradually, her presence had become a symbol of accountability. Her employees understood that they were being held to a higher standard, and it was beginning to show in their actions. The changes didn't stop at staff training. Sophia also introduced a new feedback system for guests, encouraging them to share their experiences openly. She made sure that each department head reviewed this feedback and used it as a basis for further improvement. Positive comments about staff attentiveness and the warm, welcoming atmosphere began to appear, signaling that the hotel was indeed evolving. During a weekly meeting with her department heads, Carlos, the head of security, spoke up. "I've noticed a real change in how the staff treats each other, not just the guests. There's less tension, more cooperation. It's like they're actually proud to work here now." Sophia felt a swell of pride. "That's what we're working toward, Carlos. A culture where people respect one another and take pride in their work. But remember, this is only the beginning. We're building something lasting here, and it requires continuous effort from all of us." Despite the progress, there were still moments of resistance. One afternoon, Sophia received word that Liam, the manager who had dismissed her inquiries about the spa, had made disparaging comments about the new policies, calling them unnecessary fluff and implying that the changes were merely for show. Sophia summoned him to her office. When he arrived, he looked slightly nervous, sensing that his casual criticism had reached her ears. "Liam," she began, her tone measured, "I understand you've had some reservations about the recent changes." Liam's face flushed. "Ms. Grant, I feel like we're focusing too much on these soft skills instead of actual productivity. Our guests come for luxury and efficiency. Do they really care about all this inclusivity talk?" Sophia's gaze didn't waver. "Liam, our guests come here for more than just luxury. They come for an experience, one where they feel welcomed, valued, and respected. And that begins with how we treat them and each other." She paused, letting her words sink in. "If you cannot understand or support these values, then I think it's best that we part ways." Liam's shoulders slumped, realizing she was serious. After a moment, he nodded. "I understand, Ms. Grant. I'll work on it." Sophia gave a slight nod, though she made a mental note to monitor him closely. She was determined that only those who truly embraced the new direction of Grant Towers would remain. Over time, Sophia's commitment began to yield visible results. Guests left positive reviews praising the attentive staff and the welcoming atmosphere. Employees who had once been hesitant about the changes now found a new sense of purpose in their work. Ben, the server, shared with her one day that guests had started commenting on the warmth they felt from every interaction. "It's like they can feel the difference," Ben told her, his expression genuine. "They're not just here for the luxury anymore. They're here because they feel like they belong." Sophia felt a deep sense of fulfillment hearing his words. This was exactly what she had envisioned for Grant Towers. A place where every person, regardless of background or appearance, felt like they mattered. By the end of the month, the atmosphere in the hotel had transformed. Sophia watched with quiet pride as her staff interacted with guests, their demeanor professional and welcoming. She knew that the journey wasn't over. Maintaining these standards would require continuous effort, but she was ready for it, armed with the knowledge that she had reclaimed her establishment's values and set a foundation for lasting change. As the days turned into weeks, Sophia's vision for Grant Towers took root. The transformation she had set into motion began to manifest in subtle but powerful ways, reshaping the atmosphere and values of her hotel. It started with the smallest gestures. Emma, the young receptionist who had taken the training seriously, began greeting each guest with genuine warmth, her smile radiating the newfound pride she felt. She made it a point to remember returning guests by name, taking a few extra seconds to engage in brief but meaningful conversations. "Good morning, Mr. Alvarez," she called out one day to a frequent guest, her voice warm and sincere. "Welcome back. I hope your stay is wonderful as always." Guests responded positively to the attention, and soon Emma's natural enthusiasm began to influence her colleagues. A small but genuine shift was taking place, and Sophia noticed it in the positive comments guests left in the feedback surveys. One morning, Sophia was reviewing these guest comments in her office when she came across a note that struck a chord. It read, "During my last visit, I noticed a real change in the staff. They were friendly and attentive, and I felt more welcome than ever before. It's clear something wonderful is happening here, and it makes me want to return." Sophia felt a surge of pride as she read the comment, realizing that her hard work was making a tangible difference. But her satisfaction wasn't just about business success. It was about building a place that stood for something, a space that reflected the dignity and respect she had always strived to embody. One evening, Sophia was approached by Ben, the server who had been one of the first to show her kindness during her undercover stay. He caught her in the hallway as she was heading to her office. "Ms. Grant, could I have a moment?" he asked, a slight smile on his face. "Of course, Ben," Sophia replied, stopping to give him her full attention. Ben took a breath, glancing around to ensure they were alone before he spoke. "I just wanted to say thank you. I think what you're doing here, it's really inspiring. I didn't realize how much of a difference it could make, but I've seen it firsthand. Guests are happier, and we're starting to feel like a team. A real team." Sophia felt a warmth spread through her at his words. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet appreciation for the changes she'd brought to Grant Towers. "Thank you, Ben," she said softly. "I couldn't do this without people like you who believe in what we're trying to accomplish." Ben's face brightened, and he nodded. "I think this place is starting to feel like home, for all of us." The transformation at Grant Towers began to attract positive attention from the local community as well. Word of mouth spread quickly, with guests sharing stories of the hotel's welcoming atmosphere and the attentiveness of its staff. Reviews online reflected this shift, and Sophia noticed an increasing number of comments mentioning the warmth and professionalism that guests experienced. One afternoon, a local travel blogger visited the hotel, intrigued by the rumors of change. She observed the staff with a keen eye, noting the way they interacted with guests, the attention to detail and service, and the genuine kindness they showed to each visitor. After her stay, the blogger published a glowing review, writing, "It's rare to find a luxury hotel that feels both elegant and accessible, but Grant Towers has achieved just that. The staff goes out of their way to make every guest feel at home. You can sense a culture shift here, and it's refreshing to experience a place where luxury meets inclusivity." Sophia felt a wave of satisfaction as she read the review. She knew that this was only the beginning, but it was a promising step forward. The message of respect, empathy, and inclusion she had fought so hard to instill was finally taking hold, and others were beginning to see the difference. Despite these small victories, there were still moments that tested her resolve. Jessica's former friends, who had been resistant to the changes from the start, continued to challenge her authority in subtle ways. Although they showed up for work and completed their tasks, there was an undercurrent of resentment, a sense that they felt out of place in this new, kinder version of Grant Towers. One evening, Sophia held a meeting with her department heads to discuss the progress of the cultural transformation. She listened as each manager shared their observations, and most expressed a sense of optimism about the changes. But when it was Liam's turn to speak, his tone held a note of frustration. "Ms. Grant, I appreciate the improvements we're seeing," Liam began, choosing his words carefully, "but I think some of the staff feel uncomfortable with the new expectations. They don't see the value in all this extra kindness, as they put it." Sophia met his gaze steadily. "And do you agree with them, Liam?" Liam hesitated, then shook his head. "No, I can see the impact it's having on our guests. But I think it's going to take time for everyone to adjust. Some people may never fully embrace it." Sophia nodded, understanding his concerns. "I appreciate your honesty, Liam. But let me be clear, this isn't a temporary change. We're building a culture that reflects the values of Grant Towers, and that culture is rooted in respect and inclusivity. Anyone who can't adapt to these values won't have a place here." Her words hung in the air, and Liam nodded, a look of acceptance crossing his face. He understood that Sophia's commitment was unwavering, and that she would not compromise on the principles that defined her vision. In the days that followed, Sophia noticed that the resistant employees began to either adapt or quietly resign. Some, like Sam, eventually left, realizing that they could no longer operate within the new culture. Others, however, rose to the challenge, allowing themselves to embrace the changes, if only gradually. By holding her ground, Sophia was slowly but surely weeding out those whose values didn't align with her own, and she knew that each step was bringing her closer to the hotel she envisioned. One morning, while walking through the lobby, Sophia noticed Emma assisting an elderly couple with their luggage. The couple appeared tired, and Emma patiently helped them, offering warm words and even a small bottle of water. Sophia's heart swelled as she watched the interaction, the genuine kindness in Emma's demeanor a testament to the change that had taken root. As the couple thanked Emma and made their way to the elevators, Sophia approached her. "You did a wonderful job with them, Emma," she said, her voice filled with pride. Emma smiled, a hint of shyness in her expression. "Thank you, Ms. Grant. I just want everyone to feel welcome here, like they're a part of something special." Sophia nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You're doing exactly that, Emma. You're part of what makes this place special." As weeks turned into a month, the transformation of Grant Towers became undeniable. Guests continued to leave glowing reviews, and the hotel's reputation began to reflect the warmth and inclusivity that Sophia had always dreamed of. Staff members who had once been hesitant were now fully committed to the new culture, and there was a sense of unity among them, a shared purpose that transcended individual tasks and roles. During one particularly busy weekend, Sophia observed her team as they worked together seamlessly to manage a high-profile event. Guests were greeted with smiles, each interaction marked by a quiet professionalism and genuine hospitality. Even in the chaos, there was a sense of calm and coordination that showed the true strength of the team she had built. By the end of the evening, Sophia's heart swelled with pride as she watched her staff, people who had once struggled to understand her vision, moving through the lobby, assisting guests, and creating an environment that was both luxurious and welcoming. She had brought her dream to life, and the people around her were living proof of that transformation. As she walked back to her office, her phone buzzed with a notification from the hotel's online review platform. She opened it to find yet another comment that filled her with gratitude. "Grant Towers is truly a place where guests are treated like family. The staff go out of their way to make you feel welcome, and you can tell that kindness is a part of who they are. This isn't just a hotel, it's a home." Sophia put down her phone, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She had succeeded not just in building a business, but in creating something that resonated with people on a personal level. Her journey hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but she knew that her dream was finally becoming a reality. With her hotel's transformation gaining traction, Sophia was filled with renewed confidence. Positive reviews continued to pour in, and Grant Towers was quickly becoming known as a place where luxury and warmth coexisted. But just as Sophia began to feel she had turned the corner, a new set of challenges emerged, testing the resilience of her values and the stability of her reforms. One afternoon, Sophia was reviewing recent guest comments when she noticed a peculiar trend. There were a few scattered reviews claiming that service had been slow, that reservations had been misplaced, and that some guests felt the staff were less attentive than usual. These comments were in stark contrast to the glowing feedback she had been receiving, and the timing raised a red flag. Concerned, she gathered her department heads to discuss the reviews. Tina, the guest services manager, was the first to bring up a pattern she had noticed. "Ms. Grant, we've had a few incidents recently where reservations went missing from the system, and some guests were assigned to the wrong rooms," Tina explained. "It's happened just often enough to make an impact, but I can't find a consistent reason for the mistakes." Sophia frowned. "Are we sure this isn't just an issue with the system itself?" Carlos, the head of security, shook his head. "We've checked the software multiple times, and everything is working as it should. It's starting to seem like someone may be doing this intentionally." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Intentionally?" Carlos nodded. "We can't be sure, but the timing and frequency make it seem deliberate. It's almost as if someone's trying to create the appearance of disorganization, like they want to undermine the changes you've made." Sophia's mind raced. It was possible that some employees, resistant to the new culture, might be subtly sabotaging operations. But the thought of someone working against her vision, deliberately undoing the progress they'd made, felt like a betrayal. "We'll need to investigate further," she said, her voice steady but laced with determination. "Carlos, I'd like you to review security footage and records for any unusual activity. Tina, please continue monitoring guest feedback closely. Let me know immediately if anything else suspicious happens." The team nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. As the meeting concluded, Sophia felt a weight settle on her shoulders. This was a new kind of challenge, an internal struggle that threatened the very culture she had worked so hard to establish. In the following days, Sophia took extra care to observe her staff and operations. She started each morning walking the floors, greeting her employees, and subtly checking for any signs of discontent or sabotage. Her presence was felt everywhere, and she could tell that most of her staff appreciated her engagement. But there were still a few employees, Jessica's former friends among them, who seemed unsettled by her constant oversight. One afternoon, while walking through the lobby, she overheard Sam, a bellhop and one of the most resistant staff members, muttering to Liam, the reluctant manager. "All this focus on respect and warmth," Sam whispered bitterly, "and now they're watching us like hawks. It's too much. The old way was easier." Liam, who had softened toward Sophia's policies but still harbored a sense of resistance, nodded slightly. "Yeah, it's different, but things are working. Guests are happier, and that's what matters." Sam scoffed, shaking his head. "I just think some of us are better suited elsewhere. This hotel's changed, and it's not the place I signed up for." Sophia made a mental note to follow up on this conversation. It was clear that some employees were unwilling to adapt, and that resistance could easily turn into something more damaging. A few days later, Carlos returned with his findings. After reviewing hours of security footage, he had identified Sam as the likely source of the intentional disruptions. In one clip, Sam could be seen deliberately switching room assignments for guests, and in another, he was observed altering details in the reservation system. Sophia's face tightened as she watched the footage in Carlos's office. "This goes beyond simple dissatisfaction," she murmured. "He's actively undermining our operations." Carlos nodded. "Do you want me to handle his dismissal, Ms. Grant?" Sophia considered for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I'll handle it myself. I want him to understand the impact of his actions." Later that day, Sophia asked Sam to join her in her office. He entered with an expression of forced nonchalance, though she could tell he was on edge. "Sam," Sophia began, her tone calm but unyielding, "I've noticed some recent issues with our reservations. After an investigation, We found that you were responsible for several of these disruptions. Can you explain? Sam shifted uncomfortably, his bravado faltering. Look, Ms. Grant, I don't like where this place is headed. All these changes, it doesn't feel like the hotel I started working at. I don't see why respect and warmth need to be a part of luxury. Sophia met his gaze, her eyes steady. Sam, when you were hired, you joined an establishment that values service at every level. Part of that service is treating every guest and each other with respect. That hasn't changed, but your behavior is a direct violation of the standards we've set here. Sam crossed his arms defensively. I'm just saying, not everyone wants to play by those new rules. Some of us think this hotel is losing its edge. Sophia took a breath, her tone turning firm. Sam, if you feel that way, then I believe it's best that we part ways. Grant Towers is no longer the right fit for you. This hotel represents values that go beyond luxury, values you've shown you're unwilling to embrace. Sam opened his mouth to argue but thought better of it, his face darkening as he nodded curtly. Fine, he muttered. I'll clear out my things. As he left, Sophia felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She took no pleasure in letting people go, but she knew that preserving her hotel's values was non-negotiable. Over the next week, the tension from Sam's departure rippled through the staff. For some, it served as a wake-up call, a reminder that Sophia's vision for the hotel was here to stay. Others felt more motivated than ever to prove their loyalty, knowing that they were part of something special. Emma, the receptionist who had embraced the new values wholeheartedly, approached Sophia after a team meeting one day. Ms. Grant, I just wanted to say, I think what you did was right. Sam wasn't willing to change, and I could tell he was holding us back. Sophia nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Thank you, Emma. This place is stronger with people like you who believe in what we're building. Emma smiled, her eyes bright with determination. I do believe in it, Ms. Grant. I think we all do. With Sam gone, the disruptive incidents stopped almost immediately, and the atmosphere within the hotel felt lighter. Staff members who had once been hesitant about the changes now seemed more unified, their commitment to the hotel's values reinforced by Sophia's decisive actions. But Sophia knew that the challenges weren't over. Change was a continuous journey, and there would always be moments that tested her resolve. Yet, as she looked around her hotel, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had weathered the storm and proven that her vision could withstand even the toughest opposition. Her commitment to inclusivity, respect, and dignity had become more than just ideals. They were now the foundation of Grant Towers, and they would guide her every decision moving forward. With the departure of the remaining resistant employees, a new sense of unity and commitment settled over the staff at Grant Towers. The team that remained understood the hotel's mission and shared Sophia's vision of inclusivity, respect, and genuine hospitality. This shift didn't just affect the atmosphere. It transformed the way the staff approached their roles and how guests experienced the hotel. Sophia observed this transformation with a mixture of pride and relief. For the first time since her undercover visit, she felt a sense of peace. Each interaction she witnessed between her staff and the guests reflected a renewed sense of purpose, and this reinforced her belief that they were building something far greater than a business. One afternoon, Sophia decided to meet with her team to express her gratitude. Gathering the employees in the hotel's main conference room, she addressed them with a sense of calm pride. I want to thank each and every one of you, she began, looking around the room at the faces of those who had embraced the changes. This hotel has always meant more to me than just a business. It's been my dream, a place where people from all walks of life can feel welcomed and valued. What we've built here together is something truly special. The employees listened, a few of them nodding, visibly moved by her words. When I first came here undercover, I saw a side of Grant Towers that I knew had to change, Sophia continued, her voice calm but strong. And because of all of you, we've made that change happen. Each of you has shown resilience, commitment, and a willingness to grow. You've proven that we are not just a hotel, but a community that cares for every person who walks through our doors. Emma, who had become one of Sophia's strongest supporters, raised her hand. Ms. Grant, I just want to say, thank you. You've shown us what true leadership looks like. I've never felt prouder to work anywhere than I do here." Her words were met with murmurs of agreement, and Sophia felt a surge of warmth. She knew that this was no longer just her vision. It was theirs as well. In the following weeks, word of the transformation at Grant Towers spread beyond the hotel's walls. The hospitality industry began to take notice, intrigued by the story of a luxury hotel that had successfully merged high-end service with a culture of inclusivity. Travel bloggers, lifestyle magazines, and even local news outlets reached out to Sophia, eager to share her story. One evening, Sophia received an invitation to speak at an upcoming conference on hospitality innovation. The organizers wanted her to share the story of Grant Towers' transformation as a case study in successful cultural change. At first, she hesitated. Her journey had been a personal one, and she wasn't sure she wanted to speak publicly about the struggles she had faced. But after considering the impact her story might have on others, she agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to inspire more positive change in the industry. The day of the conference arrived, and Sophia stood backstage, preparing to step out onto the stage. She took a steadying breath, remembering the countless hours she had poured into building and rebuilding her hotel. This moment, she realized, was the culmination of all the challenges she had faced. Stepping out onto the stage, Sophia was met with applause from the audience. She smiled, allowing herself to feel the pride of what she had accomplished, and then began to speak. "Thank you for having me," she began, her voice calm but resonant. "My name is Sophia Grant, and I'm here to share the story of a journey that has been both challenging and rewarding. When I started Grant Towers, I envisioned a place that was more than just luxurious. I wanted to create a space where every guest felt valued, where respect and dignity were not just words, but the foundation of our service." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Recently, I had the opportunity to go undercover in my own hotel. What I discovered was that we had strayed from the values I hold dear. I saw judgment, prejudice, and a lack of empathy from some of my own staff. It was painful to witness, but it also sparked a determination in me to set things right." Sophia then recounted the process of change, from the difficult conversations to the implementation of training programs and the gradual transformation of her staff's attitudes. She spoke about the resistance, the challenges, and the personal growth she had seen in herself and her team. "There were moments when I questioned whether this change was even possible," she admitted, glancing at the attentive faces in the audience. "But what I've learned is that culture is not just about rules or standards. It's about people and the values they choose to embody. The greatest asset any business can have is a team that truly believes in its mission." As she concluded her speech, the audience erupted into applause. Sophia felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her story had resonated, and she could see that her message had left an impact. In the days that followed, Sophia's story circulated widely, inspiring other hotel owners, managers, and staff to reflect on the values guiding their establishments. Grant Towers became known not only for its luxury but also for its welcoming and respectful environment, a place where guests and employees alike could feel valued. The positive attention brought new guests and opportunities to the hotel. As Sophia walked through the lobby one afternoon, she noticed an elderly couple chatting warmly with Emma at the reception desk. Nearby, Ben was helping a young family with their luggage, making the children laugh with a small magic trick he'd picked up. The atmosphere was one of warmth and genuine connection. Sophia paused, taking in the scene. This was exactly what she had envisioned for Grant Towers. A place where people, regardless of background, felt at home. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, knowing that the hotel was now a true reflection of her values. Later that evening, as she stood by her office window, watching the city lights, Sophia allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Her journey had been filled with challenges, but each one had shaped her and led her to this moment. Grant Towers was more than just a business. It was a testament to the power of resilience, respect, and the unwavering commitment to integrity. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Emma standing in the doorway, looking slightly nervous. "Ms. Grant, I didn't mean to interrupt," Emma began, but I just wanted to say thank you again. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've created something really special here. We all feel it." Sophia smiled warmly, touched by Emma's words. "Thank you, Emma. That means a lot to me. This place wouldn't be what it is without people like you." Emma nodded, her face alight with admiration. "I think you've shown all of us what it means to lead with respect and kindness. It's inspiring." After Emma left, Sophia sat back down, her heart filled with gratitude. She knew that her work was not over, but she was ready for whatever came next. She had created a legacy that would endure, a place where dignity and compassion were woven into every interaction. Months passed, and the story of Grant Towers continued to spread, earning the hotel a reputation as a shining example of what a people-first approach could achieve in the hospitality industry. Sophia's decision to transform her hotel was celebrated not only by her employees, but by business leaders across the industry who were inspired to reevaluate their own values and workplace cultures. Sophia received countless letters and emails from other business owners who had read about her story. They shared their own struggles and asked for advice on creating a more inclusive, respectful environment in their companies. This unexpected influence extended her impact beyond Grant Towers, and she realized that her story had become a source of inspiration for positive change far and wide. One afternoon, as she walked through the lobby, Sophia noticed a familiar face. Martha, a young woman she remembered from one of her earliest undercover visits, approached her with a nervous but hopeful expression. "Ms. Grant," Martha began, her voice steady but laced with excitement. "I'm not sure if you remember me, but I stayed here a while back during one of your early reforms. I came back to see how things were going, and I just wanted to say, I can feel the difference. The staff is amazing, and there's a real warmth here now." Sophia smiled, touched that Martha had returned. "Thank you, Martha. It's wonderful to see you again. We've come a long way, thanks to a team that believes in what we're doing here." Martha nodded, her eyes bright. "You know, I've told so many people about this place, about how it's different from anywhere else I've stayed. I feel like I'm visiting family when I come here, and that's rare. I think it says so much about what you've built." Sophia thanked her warmly, feeling a renewed sense of pride in her work. Martha's words reminded her that Grant Towers had become more than just a hotel. It was a place where guests could feel respected, safe, and genuinely cared for. Later that week, Sophia received a call from Thomas, a journalist who had covered her journey in a recent magazine article. He wanted to know if she would consider doing a follow-up interview about how the changes had impacted her personally, as well as the lives of her employees and guests. Sophia agreed, seeing this as another opportunity to spread her message of empathy and respect. The interview took place in her office, overlooking the city skyline that symbolized her hard-earned success. "So, Ms. Grant," Thomas began, leaning forward with interest, "you've achieved something extraordinary here at Grant Towers. But I'm curious, what's been the most meaningful part of this journey for you?" Sophia paused, reflecting on the past year. "It's the people," she answered after a moment. "I went undercover expecting to find issues in customer service, but what I found was so much more profound. I saw the power of kindness, the strength of integrity, and the impact that respect can have on people's lives. Watching my team embrace those values, seeing how it's changed them, that's been the most meaningful part." Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "And do you believe that what you've done here can inspire other companies, other leaders?" Sophia smiled. "I think any place can be transformed when people commit to a shared vision. It's about recognizing that success isn't just about profits. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued, from employees to guests. I believe every business has the potential to make a positive impact, and that's something I hope my story encourages others to pursue." The interview concluded with Thomas expressing his admiration for her work, and Sophia felt that familiar sense of fulfillment. She had built something lasting, something that would continue to make a difference long after the final words of her story were shared. As winter approached, Sophia decided to organize a special event for her employees, a celebration to recognize their hard work and dedication. She booked the hotel's grand ballroom, decorating it with elegant lighting and floral arrangements, creating a space that felt both luxurious and welcoming. The evening of the event arrived, and as the employees gathered, Sophia noticed their laughter, their camaraderie, and the genuine warmth they shared. It was a stark contrast to the atmosphere she had first encountered, and it filled her with pride to see the transformation in each of them. Taking a deep breath, Sophia stepped up to the podium, raising a glass in a toast. "To my incredible team," she began, her voice strong and filled with gratitude. "This past year, we've built something truly extraordinary. Each of you has contributed to creating a place where every guest feels respected, and I want you to know how proud I am of what we've accomplished together. Tonight is a celebration of you, of the people who make Grant Towers a place we can all be proud of." The room erupted in applause, and Sophia smiled, feeling a profound sense of joy. She knew that this was not just her success. It was a shared achievement, a testament to the dedication of every person in that room. As the evening wound down, Sophia stood near the ballroom entrance, watching as her employees mingled and celebrated. Ben approached her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Ms. Grant, I just wanted to say, thank you for everything," he said, his voice sincere. "Working here has been a life-changing experience for me. You've shown us that kindness and respect aren't just policies. They're a way of life." Sophia placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of connection to the people who had helped her bring her vision to life. "Thank you, Ben. People like you are the heart of this place, and I couldn't be prouder of what we've built together." As Ben walked away, Sophia allowed herself to savor the moment. She had come so far, and now, standing in the midst of her thriving hotel, surrounded by a team that shared her values, she knew that her work had made a lasting impact. In the days that followed, Grant Towers continued to flourish, its reputation growing as a place where luxury was matched by warmth, and where every guest was treated with dignity. Sophia's story continued to inspire others, reminding them that real success was about more than profits. It was about the lives touched and the communities created. Looking out over the city from her office one evening, Sophia knew that her journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new opportunities to reinforce the culture she had created. But she was ready, armed with the knowledge that she had built something truly meaningful. Grant Towers was no longer just a building, a business, or even a dream. It was a legacy of respect, resilience, and compassion. A legacy that would endure for generations to come. As the lights of the city sparkled below, Sophia allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction, knowing that her vision had come to life. She had faced adversity, risen above it, and built a place that reflected the values she held dear. And as she looked out over the horizon, she knew that her work, her mission, would continue to inspire others to lead with integrity, compassion, and unyielding respect. As Sophia's journey at Grant Towers shows, true success isn't just about building a business. It's about creating a legacy of respect, integrity, and compassion. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do to build a culture of kindness and respect in your own life? By subscribing, you'll stay updated with more inspiring stories of resilience, leadership, and the power of positive change. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to sharing more journeys with you.